underwater world of the black bass, an endless curiosity for bass anglers. Spring, the spawning season, a bittersweet time when fishing can be very good or very bad. Today, you're going to learn a lesson in bassing before the beds.
Grand Lake of the Cherokees near Afton, Oklahoma, site of the $195,000 Bassmaster Oklahoma Invitational. Today you're going to see an incredible pre-spawn pattern unfold, and the Bassmaster's TV cameras will be right there with all the action as three top pros battle it out on this northeastern Oklahoma bass factory. Tommy Martin, the Hemp Hill, Texas veteran and 1974 world champion, puts all his experience to use in trying to figure out the stubborn springtime bass. You'll pick up pointers in bass behavior from another classic champion, Ken Cook, a former fishery biologist, as Ken goes sight fishing for bass. And you'll see firsthand why Jay Ellis of Jasper, Texas, is being touted as the future superstar of the Bassmaster Tournament Trail.
It's all that, plus a close-up visit with a guru of sight fishing for bass, Guido Hibden.
It might have flared its gills, raised its back fin, or something. I mean, it done something to let us know that the fish can be caught or will bite.
And you'll meet our special Bassmaster casting kit of the week. And there's Tommy Martin's pros pointer on how to use plastic frog chunks. I'm Bob Cobb. Stay with us. The Bassmasters will be coming right back.
The time is early April. The place, Grand Lake of the Cherokees, a 59,000-acre impoundment in northeastern Oklahoma. 300 fishing pros are competing over 3 days for $195,000 in awards, including a $35,000 first place prize. For most of the contestants, springtime means shallow water fishing. Normally, the bass are moving into the spawning coves, but a recent cold front has dropped water temperatures and delayed nature's urge. And it's a clue for a strategy change for some pros, such as Tommy Martin, the 1974 Classic champion and an 18-time qualifier for the World Finals.
And the bass are doing a number of different things. There's quite a few bass up trying to spawn. Real shallow water, 2, 3, and 4 foot, 5 foot. Making beds and getting on the beds. There's a number of fish that are still out in the deeper water, but I feel like the bigger fish, you know, the way to win a tournament is by catching quality fish, bigger fish. That's the way to win a tournament. And I feel like the bigger fish, a lot of them are still staging. They're just moving up. They're not really going into bed yet. They're kind of moving into the little sub-points or secondary points back in the creeks, and that's what I'm going to key on in this tournament. I'm just fishing these little secondary points back in the creek for these staging bass, and I think I haven't seen a lot of the other fishermen doing this. Most everyone's bedding fishing because you can see so many fish on the beds. But I feel like the bigger fish, or a lot of the bigger fish, are still out in deeper water, staging to move up, and that's what I'm going to key on. I need some help. I can see beds when I go back in the coves and pockets, like in that little pocket there. There's some beds back in it, but those fish around the beds are all, they hadn't laid any eggs yet, so that they're not really protecting the beds, but they're in there around them, and they're real spooky. That's why a lot of those guys yesterday were having such a tough time catching them off of beds, because they're not really, they hadn't laid any eggs yet. You know, the bigger fish are definitely out a little deeper and on these steeper banks, moving into spawn. They're not on the beds. Thank you. I'm catching my bass anywhere from 8 to 15 foot. I never really know where I'm going to get bit. All of the bass are coming on a Carolina rigged lizard, and the way I'm rigging that particular rig is real important. To catch these fish, it's certainly important to keep my confidence level high. I've caught a lot of fish since I started rigging my Carolina rig this way, and I think it will help the average angler also. Of course, I'm using 20-pound Berkeley Trilene XT main line and also a 20-pound green leader. I use the green Trilene leader. I'm using a 3/4 ounce Jaw Tech brass weight which slides up and down the line. Now this brass doesn't cut your line like lead does. It's very, it's real good on the line. It doesn't cut the line. But I'm using two little clickers. I think you can see them here. These little clickers, I put them right on. I put the weight on first, then put the two little clickers on, and then I put a red bead, a glass bead. Then I tie a number 7 black swivel. I think black is more invisible in the water, and all of these things may seem immaterial, but it's working for me, and it really gives me a lot of confidence when I have it rigged this way. But when you shake that sinker, boy, it makes a lot of noise, and I think it'll draw these fish in this clear water. It pulls them, and it draws them to the bait. Now, I'm using a new Mustad hook. This is a little wide gap Mustad hook, a 1/0. Boy, it's just a fine hook and I have to give it a lot of credit in this tournament because I haven't lost a fish. The way I have it rigged is real important to me, and I think it makes a drastic difference because, again, this lead banging those little clackers and clickers, making that noise, it'll attract these fish, and it just gives me a lot of confidence, really. The conditions are idealistic for Carolina rigging right now. There's not much cover in the water. The water's clear. They're on a clean bottom, basically, just rubble and rock and gravel and stuff. And they're out in deeper water. Plus, you can fish faster with this big sinker. See, I can cover more water effectively. My normal way of fishing is covering a lot of water and fishing extremely fast. But I realized early on here that these fish, the mood that they're in, you're gonna have to slow down. And I think that's what a lot of us have to learn. And I know I've had to learn it, and you can learn it too. When the fish are in a mood that they're not going to be real aggressive and they're sluggish and slow, you got to get slow with them. And that's what I'm doing. I'm slowing down, and I'm fishing much slower than I like to fish, much slower than I want to fish. But that's one of the key reasons I'm catching these bigger fish. Concentration is another thing that's really important. I have to concentrate on every cast. I'm feeling that sinker hit every rock. When I butt this sinker up against a rock or a stump down there in 8 and 10, 12 foot of water, I'll take my rod tip and just shake it like that, and make that sinker rattle those clickers. It beats those clickers, and it makes that clacking noise. And a lot of times when I do that, I'll feel one go boom. He'll just hit that lizard real hard. Then I'll just let him bog down on it. You got to let these fish take it when you're fishing a Carolina rig. It's not like a Texas rig where you snap back and jerk the instant you feel the strike. I'm letting them pull down. I'm giving them plenty of time to eat the lizard. Then I'm just rearing back on them, setting the hook, and getting them out of that cover.
Stay tuned. The Bassmasters will be right back with more tips and tactics from the pros on how to catch springtime bass.
Little bitty fella.
Now it's time for Bass Mail, where you send in questions for the pros. James Evans from Chattanooga, Tennessee asks 1995 Bassmasters Classic champion Mark Davis, how do I get line twists out of my spinning reel?
James, there's two things you can do that's going to help you out. One, if instead of opening the bail and pulling the line out to get rid of these bad loops you get from twisted line, leave your bail closed, loosen up your drag, and pull them out like so. Watch it, it's going to disappear. There you are. Second thing you can do is, before you start fishing, take your lure off your line, drag your line out behind the boat for about 10 minutes, wind it back up on your reel, you're ready to go fishing. That's going to help you.
Send your bassin questions to Bass Mail, Post Office Box 140430, Dallas, Texas 75214. Catching bass in shallow water. The pros call it sight fishing. In the spring, it's a proven method, but not a cinch catch by any means. Just because you see a bass doesn't mean it's going to take your lure.
Can't get her to bite. There's a pair right there, but she's big and I need her, but I can't make her bite.
Ken Cook of Mears, Oklahoma, a 6-time winner on the Bassmaster Tournament Trail, was trained as a fishery biologist. And some folks believe that Ken thinks like a fish. For sure, he understands bass behavior and can more often than not figure out how to make them bite. That's evident from looking at the scoreboard in this Oklahoma Invitational. Ken Cook's right in the hunt. After 2 rounds, Tommy Martin holds the lead with 37 pounds, 13 ounces with 10 bass, moving up from second place. Ken Cook with 34 pounds, 11 ounces ranks second, having jumped from 9th. He had yesterday's best weigh-in of 19 pounds, 4 ounces. Jay Yellis, the BASS Tour's hottest young pro, is third with 33 pounds, 8 ounces. With the weather warming and more bass moving shallow, Tommy Martin may have trouble holding onto his lead. But for Ken and Jay, their chances are improving. For them, there are more targets showing up along the shoreline. But bass in the shallows are extra spooky. Here's our lesson from Ken Cook on how to improve your chances.
Once you see the fish, it's extremely important to identify what stage they are, if they're spawning, or whether they're going to spawn, or have spawned, or if it's a male or a female, and from how they're acting and positioning themselves on the bed, if there is a bed. We were seeing a lot of fish coming on the beds. As the tournament progressed, more and more fish were showing up on the beds. First, the males were there by themselves, and you'd see them moving in and out of the bed. They wouldn't really stay in the bed too well because they didn't have a female. As a female came to the beds, you'd see a pair of fish. And sometimes with a pair of fish, it'd be obviously a big one and a small one. But if they're actually spawning, if you see them in there actually doing the spawning act, then it's virtually impossible to catch one. And if they're there in a guarding mode, which usually means they've already produced some eggs and have eggs on the nest, then one or more of those fish is usually real catchable because they're protecting those eggs from predation. You put a bait in there and they'll bite it. So that assessment of what the fish's attitude is extremely critical in developing a plan whether I can catch this fish or not. One of the keys I look for is to try to key in on if there's a bed and the fish is sitting on the bed, where his attention area is. If you pitch a bait in there, or ideally throw a bait past the bed, drag it into the bed. If he leaves and then doesn't come immediately back, it's a long shot that you can catch the fish. Ideally, he what we'll call addresses the bait. He'll pay attention to it. He'll stand up, look at it. If he does that, he's fixing to bite it. I mean, you just got to be ready at that point in time. And then he may just ignore it, but then you make another presentation and do it over and over and over and over again until he eventually will make the bait hits him just right and he'll bite it. You want to pay real close attention to where he takes up his position. Because when he comes back into the position, he's looking at right where he wants to be, right where he wants to guard. And that's the spot you want to put your bait. You want to have your bait in that position. What I like to do is pitch a bait in the bed. If the fish leaves, starts to come back, I want to make sure the bait is in the bed, in his key spot, as he approaches back to the bed. Then just as he gets into a vision of the bait, then you just barely move it. So that as he comes back to the bait, here's this thing in his eggs, in his nest, and that's the best time, most likely time to get the fish to bite. If the water temperature is 65 degrees, ideal temperature, a male will build this bed, or he'll find a bed that's already built. He'll attract a female there, she'll deposit some eggs, and generally over a 2 or 3 day period, he'll attract several females to the same bed. Each of the females will deposit some eggs. He fertilizes each one of them, and then about 3 days after the first one spawns, they start to hatch. And then if it's been a 2 or 3 days period since that male has been there guarding that same nest and different females have spawned, then eggs might continue to hatch for 2 or 3 more days. But so you're talking about a week is about a maximum time for a male to be on a bed.
Don't go away. The Bassmasters will be coming right back with more how-to tips from Jay Ellis and Guido. Now here's an interesting situation. Jay Ellis paired with Guido Hibden in the final round of the Oklahoma Invitational. Ellis in third place can win the tournament if his shallow water game plan holds together. However, his partner Guido Hibden is the master of the game. He wrote the book on sight fishing for bass. With this technique, usually only one angler can play at a time. Later, we asked Jay about how he felt.
And I was a little self-conscious, you know, out there sight fishing. I was like, first bed we pulled up to, I'm like, well, geez, I hope I'm doing this right. And, I mean, I got the master looking over my shoulder, but it worked out pretty good. We caught, Guido was a real sportsman and letting me catch my limit first, and I caught it, and then he started fishing after that. But, you know, he gave me a shot to win.
Sure, I tried to coach him all day long. You know, I couldn't help myself. You know, when you don't have a rod in your hand, you can do a lot of coaching. But there was a 3-pounder by a big stump, and the bed was off to the right-hand side of it, and you could see where she had moved, or he had moved the bed up and down. I mean, it was a real long-looking bed. Well, he kept wanting to throw to the top side of it. Well, the fish was never interested to the top side of it, but every time that he got down that bumped that stump, that fish would jump and turn around and look at it. And finally, I told him, I said, just throw it on top of the stump and let it lay there. Whenever it swims back by the stump, just pull it off in front of it. First time he done it, I mean, she jumped and ate the silly thing. Bobo.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Don't try to lift that fish. Where you going?
Over here.
And the fish is guarding a little area, and it doesn't make any difference. Sometimes it's in the fall of the year. You know, it doesn't have to be in the spring of the year. They pick them a spot, and they guard it. Well, now it's up to you to figure out what that little technique is to catch that fish. You know, and most of the time it's some little subtle, a little tiny 4-inch straight worm. You know, like a Lucky Strike body worm or a Zoom. You know, some kind of little 4-inch smoke with silver flake or a crawfish color or something like that. Sometimes that's what it takes to catch it. Some little small profile bait. A lot of times we'll take a 4-inch worm and cut it in two and use it on a little tiny jig head. You know, it's something, if you'll notice a fish that's standing on the bed, she's all the time running something off, but you can't see what it is. Well, it's those little tiny minnows that come in there and she'll chase them out of it. The smaller you make that bait, a lot of times the easier it is to catch that fish.
And here's a tip from Jay Yellis on lure presentation.
A lot of the fish were down about 4 feet on real steep banks, and what I had to do there was go to a heavier weight to get those fish, you know, to get it, because your eyes really deceive you. When, you know, when you look and you think, and the bed's 4 feet deep on a steep bank, it's really tough to get the bait in the bed because it's hard to tell exactly where the bait is. And so I went up. I usually use like an 1/8 or a 16th ounce weight on my tube, but in that tournament I had to go up to like a 1/4 ounce to really keep it down there on those steeper banks. And that was one of the keys. That if I used a lighter head on those steep banks, it would just kind of the bait would just kind of swim away from the bed and it wouldn't be on the bottom. So in order to keep good bottom contact, I went up to a little bit deeper, or a little heavier lead.
3 methods to catch springtime bass. Tommy Martin, Ken Cook, and Jay Yellis. They all had a good game plan, and they all weighed in 15 bass, the tournament limit. But Tommy Martin, the Oklahoma Invitational champion, keyed in on the bigger staging bass. He posts the top weight of 52 pounds, 6 ounces. Ken Cook finishes second, only ounces behind, with 51 pounds, 8 ounces. Followed by Jay Yellis's 50 pounds, 3 ounces. Young Sean Penn of Kentucky, Tommy's first day partner, ranks 4th with 49 pounds. Yes, he learned a lesson fishing with Tommy and made it pay off.
The winner of the Oklahoma Invitational from Hemphill, Texas is Tommy Martin. Come on up, Tommy. Congratulations on a catch with 52 pounds, 6 ounces. He wins $14,000 cash and a new Ranger bass boat.
Bob, you know, you and I both been doing this a long time, and it's something I guess we just never get tired of. Bass fishing is such a challenging sport that even though I've been doing it most of my adult life, I still wake up every morning when I go fishing really excited about being out there.
Amen to that. One more hand for a great champion, Tommy Martin.
He's just a little, I thought he was a good one.
Right now, it's time for the Pros Pointer, the how-to section of the Bassmasters. Brought to you by Wrangler Rugged Wear, geared for the outdoors.
You know, these plastic frogs are getting real popular now. A lot of people use them, especially during the warm weather months. Let me give you a little tip on how to rig them and put them on your jig where they'll stay on and you don't have any trouble with them. I take a little piece of toothpick and run it right through the head of the frog like this. Just push it through the plastic, all the way through like that, and then cut it off. Take your side cutters and just trim it off like that. And then take your jig, and when you hook it on, put your hook point right behind that toothpick like this and go through. And what that does, it gives you a stop there, or a stopper, and it will not pull through the plastic with that toothpick in there, and you can fish this frog for a long time. You can jerk it and rip it, especially if you're fishing in the weeds. Boy, that's a great little idea, and it's just a good tip, and it'll save you a lot of time and trouble.
Well, that's the story from Grand Lake and how the pros adjust to springtime bassing. Next week, we're headed to Moline, Illinois, and the Mississippi River for the Bassmaster Top 100. Catching river bass is always a challenge, but where there's a will, there's a way, and we'll tell you why. Join us. For the Bassmasters, I'm Bob Cobb. See you all next week.
The Bassmasters has been brought to you by Zebco Quantum, the top names in fishing, Lubramatic, we work weekends, Ranger boats, still building legends one at a time. Storm lures, quality lures for taking the big ones by storm. Chevy trucks, the most dependable, longest-lasting trucks on the road. Jerseys, American activewear. Berkeley Power Bait, fish bite and won't let go. Motor Guide, the choice of serious fishermen. Wrangler Rugged Wear, geared for the outdoors. And the Bass Angler Sportsman Society, the world's largest bass fishing organization.
6 ounces, 25, 6 ounces. Yeah! All right, let's see your 2 big fish. Man, if you can see them, you can catch them. Look at this, folks. I don't think he's... You got the 2 biggest? Oh. Now, that's Grand Lake bass, isn't it? Now, that's... Let's weigh your largest one, Mitch. Put the lid on. We gotta have the lid on now.